Martin shooting case, where a new video obtained by ABC News shows the gunman, George Zimmerman, arriving at the Sanford, Florida Police Department seemingly without any obvious bruises, cuts, or blood on his face. In the 1-minute security video, Zimmerman is removed from the police cruiser and escorted into the station. Although the footage is recorded from overhead, so it's a bit hard to see, there are no apparent signs that Zimmerman had a broken nose, as suggested by his attorney. Police say they did not arrest Zimmerman that night because he appeared wet and covered in grass, bleeding from wounds to his head.
We don't see any wounds there. I understand why attorneys do what attorneys do, defense attorneys in criminal cases. It has been, I believe, very regrettable, shameful in some cases, for some who have decided they're going to step out and try to blame this tragedy on a young African-American man who weighed 100 pounds less, weighing 100 pounds less than the man who was chasing him through the streets with a 9mm gun, while Trayvon Martin was carrying iced tea and Skittles. I would just suggest to those who continue to adopt this twisted line for whatever reason, you will look foolish in the end, or worse.
All right.
Do not defend. You defend who you want to defend, but if you're attacking a young man who was minding his own business, carrying Skittles and iced tea through a neighborhood, trying to get home, and yet he was chased through a neighborhood when the authorities were telling Zimmerman to get out of the way with a man with a 9mm gun. Your defense of the guy with a 9mm gun and your attempts to try to turn the victim in this case, the clear victim in this case, into the aggressor is nothing short of shameful. You look stupid. Or worse.
Zimmerman claims he shot the 17-year-old in self-defense after Trayvon Martin punched him and repeatedly slammed his head into the sidewalk. I didn't see anything on that video.
Let me ask you a question. A Florida native, what does this do to the Florida tourist industry? If a tourist can go down there and figure any guy can pull out a gun and not go to jail because you've got this unbelievable law down there with whack jobs in the legislature.
Actually, the law does not apply in this case, and I think it's important to note that from the very beginning, National Review, I think, has been out front, being very commendable, saying, do not try to defend this crackpot that called the police 50 times, chasing people through neighborhoods with 9mm guns. Even Darrell Peden, who drafted the law, said from the beginning, this law does not apply to this case.
Except in this town, it did.
In this is a town that has a history of some
was that right?
Very regrettable incidents. 5 years ago, you had an African American man who was shot in the back by two people who claimed that they were doing it in self-defense and he was trying to run them over with his car. I think it has nothing to do with this law. It has everything to do with this town and a police chief and a state attorney and an entire system that is broken down. And boy, let me tell you what, and I will say it again, for those that didn't hear it before, we all know around this table, we all know, if you're within the sound of my voice, you know this as well. If an African-American male weighing 100 pounds more than a white teenager, if he chased a white teenager through a neighborhood who was carrying candy and iced tea and then shot him point-blank range in the chest, that African-American male would be on his way to death row. Oh, of course, he wouldn't be convicted yet, but he would basically have two choices in front of him. And anybody that works in the system, not only in Florida but across this country, knows this. He would either be pleading guilty and getting life in prison, or he would be headed to the electric chair.
Now, Zimmerman, who's making these claims that his head was slammed into the sidewalk.
The ABC video shows
right.
that's just not the case.
He didn't check into the emergency room, so there's no medical report that might show that there's some sort of injury that we don't see in that video. The lead investigator reportedly...
Wait, can I ask you a question? Why aren't we seeing this from the police? The same police department that held Trayvon Martin for 3 days after he was killed, not notifying his parents.
Yeah.
Why isn't the police department acting more aggressively?
The system here, because the lead investigator reportedly recommended that Zimmerman be charged with manslaughter. And the attorney's office said there wasn't enough evidence, and something put a stop on charges.
Where is this town, anyway?
There's collective outrage around the world about this incident.
That's right.
And people want to get to the root of it, how it happened, how it could happen. So she is admitting that things have changed in this country, which is relatively heartening.
Well, the other thing is that blacks make up about 13% of the American population, and the most recent records of 2008 show that 90% of the murders of African Americans are committed by other African Americans. So I think that there's something to be made about some people saying that this is a typical scenario. A Caucasian or Hispanic person killing a black person and people doing nothing about it. There seems to be another problem going on in our society when you start to look at the statistics.
The key is you can't have a rush to judgment. You can't have vigilante justice. You can't have a rush to judgment.
But if you're Roseanne Barr, you know everything. So you don't need to know everything.
The thing about, whether it's Spike Lee or Roseanne Barr twittering out somebody's address.
Yeah.
What if some nitwit who subscribes to their Twitter feed sees an address, goes to that house, and kills somebody? Then what happens? Anyway, Bill O'Reilly was on with the Trayvon Martin family attorney last night, and he had this observation.
The special prosecutor is going to see the tape.
Yeah.
The special prosecutor is going to listen to what you present to him. So why does Oprah Winfrey or MSNBC have to convict Zimmerman on television? Why? It's unnecessary.
I don't know if it's a conviction. They're calling for an arrest. And there's a big difference between an arrest and a conviction.
See, now that's an interesting point. There is a huge difference between an arrest and a conviction. So, I think the authorities are now looking into this. There's a special prosecutor assigned to it. But I think it gets dangerous in this age of technology with Twitter and with the internet and all this kind of stuff where regular people are making a rush to judgment, and we really don't know all the facts. And honestly, on this couch, we have no idea what happened.
Like the
we
Duke
have
lacrosse
no
case.
idea what
They
happened.
did a movie about the misinformation on the Duke lacrosse case, which, by the way, contained a lot of the same characters, led by Reverend Al Sharpton, who quickly went down there to condemn the team. And Jesse Jackson is back.
Only one guy on earth knows what happened, and that is George Zimmerman. So, stand by. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about this. President Obama